we can express a desire for a thing, like I want to be this thing, but I wonder if you really want to be that thing, though. You know? What I mean by that is that if you are, let's say that you say you want to be a baker. Let's say you enjoy baking. If you enjoy baking, what's something that you might do? Bake. Yeah, you're going to bake. And if you enjoy baking, how much are you going to bake?
A lot.
A lot, yeah. And when you're done baking, what are you going to do? You're going to bake some more. Yeah, you're going to bake some more. Maybe you're going to eat it, but you're going to bake some more. And then days will go by, and I guess hours will go by, and they'll become days, and then they'll become weeks, and all of a sudden you'll be like, wow, where'd all the time go? That's right, I've been baking the whole time. It's like if you enjoy running, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to run. And then when you're not running, you're probably going to be thinking about running. If you enjoy any sport at all, if you enjoy baseball, I was just reading a journal from one of my students who was saying that he's not in this class, I can say a little bit about him. I don't want to say what position he is, because some of you might know him. But anyway, he plays baseball here, and he plays a position. He was saying that that's all he's ever wanted to do. And he was going back to like when he was like a little kid, and then even going up until now when he was injured not too long ago, and he was having to kind of face what life might be like not playing baseball. And then he was able to come back from it, and then he's able to play, and he believes he's better than he was before, because the whole time that he was injured, it made him think about whether he, how much he really loved it, and he did, and how much he missed it, and how much he wanted another opportunity. So when he got another opportunity, he went for it. And now something else has happened in his life where he's having to rethink this kind of all over again. But if the question is like, should he be playing baseball? Well, yeah, because he's playing baseball. When he's not playing baseball, he's thinking about it a lot. And it's really interesting. We've done these research on college basketball teams, where you have them practice a certain number of hours, let's say 10 hours each, and then one team you have them practice for a little bit longer, 2 hours extra, and then the other team you have them not practice for 2 more hours, but you have them go home and they think about basketball. And not just think about the game like, not think about like their favorite players, but to actually think about how they dribble, how they move, and something really interesting happens. Those teams that did the 20% more thinking rather than playing, they started to outperform the teams that were, in terms of individual performance, that were practicing longer. So in other words, there's something to be said now. If you combine those two things, extra practice and extra mental work, then you get even better than that. And this is kind of how baking happens. Baking will happen like you're thinking about a recipe, so you get in the kitchen and you make it, and then later on you're thinking about it, and I go, that could have used more of this, more of that. I wonder if I baked it like this instead, and all that mental work where you're practicing it out in your head, then it manifests. That's what we're talking about when we say that somebody has a real desire for a thing. Rather than just, oh yeah, I wanna bake sometime. I think that'd be cool to be a baker. Yeah, and this is why I guess I'll leave it at that. So there was a sacrifice that was involved, and then that's kind of key to what he's getting at here. When you're baking, you're not really sacrificing necessarily a lot. Maybe when you're an athlete, you're sacrificing a lot in terms of your time and what you eat and your body as well. What do you play?
Football.
Football. So yeah, so you're sacrificing a lot of your body in that process. And so there's a real sacrifice that's there. So then when you transfer schools, especially, you're sacrificing your body, of course, but also now the relationships. And that's key to what he's getting at here. To be able to sacrifice what we are. And now, if you go over to that D1 school, what could you become? That. A big question mark. I don't know. Is it better for you to be over there than it is to be over here? Or no? So you can stop me if you've heard this before. I don't remember if I've talked about that in this class before, but being able to sacrifice as a general concept, we take it for granted today because it's so obvious to us. You gotta sacrifice to get what you want. You gotta sacrifice to get what you want. That's a really sophisticated idea. It's nothing that is natural at all. When you look around the whole world, the animal kingdom doesn't seem to do this. Your dog doesn't sit there and say, well, I'm hungry right now, so I'm going to sacrifice I'm going to sacrifice the food I have right now because I might not have food tomorrow. So let me save up for tomorrow. Dogs don't do this. Your cat doesn't do this. Chimps don't seem to do this. If you have certain animals that will eat as much as they can, and then they'll hide the rest. But that's because they're already full. They're not worried about tomorrow. They're, in the same. They're first and foremost worried about today. As humans, we're able to give up something that we presently have in our hands and get something more later. And the sooner that you can learn the ability to do this thing, and I'm not joking, that's going to take you extremely far in life. When you have to have the immediate gratification, that makes it very difficult to do well in life. And here's what I mean by that. So you've got $100 right now. Do you take that $100 and you go buy a new pair of shoes? Or do you take that money that's in your hand right now, put it aside, and then save it up so that you can invest it? So that someday you can make that $100 into 120, 130, 140, whatever, and then grow it from there. It's so much easier to say, you know what, okay, I'm going to buy the shoes now, but the next $100 I get, I'm going to put that aside. Well, if you did that, now you'd have $200 to put aside, and not just $100. So now you're only half as far as you possibly could have gotten. So it's very hard, though, to give up that thing that we have right now. And again, there's two ways of looking at it, right? I hate when people say right at the end of a sentence. And I said it because I was combining it in my head with the very next sentence. You know what I mean? Like when people will be talking, right? And then they'll say, you have to sacrifice, right? And then, you have to really pay attention, right? And they ask that right at the end. That's because they're not really sure of themselves. And they're really hoping that you'll give them some indication that what they're saying is correct or smart. I didn't mean it that way, but I just said it, and I hate myself for it. Anyway, I'll edit that out of the video. There's two ways of looking at that statement, YOLO. You only live once, so therefore buy the shoes. Or you can look at it as you only live once, so save up that money so that you get a better tomorrow. Because yes, you only live once, but if you only live once, then that means you shouldn't be so careless with your life. You shouldn't just throw it away. And again, the first way of looking at it is, screw it, who cares? Second view is, I care, because I only live once. And it's an interesting statement because it really could be taken in both of those two ways if you consider it. So if you only live once, then maximize what it is that you have, that you could become. But again, this is a really hard thing to do because, like for example, think about something that you like a lot, right? Whatever it is, I don't care what it is. Think about something that you like a lot, like some kind of a skill, not just like I like cheeseburgers, but think about like a skill thing that you enjoy doing, and then ask yourself how much time a day you actually put into becoming better at that thing. So let's say, for example, you put I don't know, 2 hours a day into baking. Okay? And if you say that you spend 2 hours a day baking, I don't believe you. I don't believe a single word of that. You have to prove it by bringing me baked goods to eat. So you have to bake me something. Then I'll believe you. I had a student last year who wrote in the letter of introduction that that they make the best muffins in the world, and that they're confident about that. And so I said, I don't believe it. Got to bring him in to prove it. So
How were the muffins?
What's that?
How were the muffins?
Yeah. That's a good question. How were the muffins? Yeah, I just said it. I said, they're all right. So if you spend 2 hours a day baking, now think about what you spend the rest of your time on. Imagine if instead you spend, let's say, 5 hours a day baking. And forget about like I don't have the supplies, just conceptualize this. So now, at the end of a week, you've now spent 30 hours baking instead of, let's say, 12 hours baking. So now you're not just, you haven't just doubled, you've more than doubled your time that you're putting into that. And then multiply that out by a month. Now, for a month, you're going to have 120 hours of baking versus 24 hours of baking. How much better do you think you're going to be on something like this? So if you imagine, something that you enjoy a lot, and then just double and add another 50% on top of that of the time that you spend a day on that. Now start to try to imagine what you possibly could be in that area. How good could you be? If you already spend 5 hours a day drawing, spend 7, and see what your drawing is going to look like after 7 hours a day. Oh, but that's so much harder. Yeah, that's where the growth happens. The growth doesn't happen just where you enjoy it. The growth happens a little bit beyond that. You don't want to do it to the point that you hate it, but think about what you could become beyond that. That's the sacrifice that we're talking about. You're sacrificing because that means that's an extra couple of hours a day you won't be putting into something else. It means that you're going to do it to the point that maybe you get a little tired with your hand, but that doesn't matter. You still push through it and you grow anyway. That's where the growth happens, in that discomfort of all of it. And again, you do it to a point where if you do start to hate it, then maybe that's not the thing that you're passionate about. It's hard to imagine getting tired of something that you're passionate about. Anybody in here ever had too much pizza? I don't just mean, I mean, what stops you from eating more pizza?
Too much pizza.
Yeah, but what's the too much?
Cheese.
Pepperoni. Cheese, pepperoni. You guys get tired of pepperoni and cheese?
The crust is the best part. What are you talking about?
I hate the crust.
What?
I've never eaten a crust in my life.
So that's what I gotta do to get you guys fired up.
I'm sorry, bro, but like, don't convince me that I'll eat the crust.
All I gotta do is talk about.
Crust is the best part.
It's the worst part.
You put like, sauce
You
on
can
it.
tolerate that from him?
What's the argument, huh? It's
My
the worst part.
argument is that it's basically breadsticks after you eat it all.
Don't put up with that shit. What he's talking
No,
about.
but the thing is, like, the breadsticks and the crust are two different things. The breadstick is made for, like, fluff.
Literally, they're the same thing.
No,
you
we're
just
not,
eat
no,
it
we're
all.
not, no, we're
What are
not.
you talking
You
about?
should talk louder. That makes your point clearer.
Exactly.
You should yell over him. That makes
It's
you
the worst
right.
part. Bro, okay, what type of breadsticks do you get? No, what type of crust do you get?
Like, okay, so you know like the Pizza Hut crust? Like,
That's not crust. I'm talking about regular crust.
Like, what do you mean by regular crust?
If you get a different type of crust, that's not technically a crust then. I'm talking about a regular pizza crust.
A regular, like, so like, wait, what do you mean by that? A regular pizza crust?
Yes,
like,
not
from
specified.
Domino's or like what?
Any type of regular pizza crust.
Okay,
not
let's say
specified.
Costco pizza. I eat, like, you eat everything except for the crust. Like, I forget what Costco pizza is like. Does anyone remember? Like,
Wow.
Field trip.
but basically,
Wait, what?
right?
What?
You
What?
eat it.
So, whether you eat the crust or not, what stops you from eating more pizza? Yes.
You get disgusted by it eventually.
Who gets disgusted by the pizza?
Or like you start getting sick of it. That's what I meant.
You get what?
You start getting sick of it.
How?
Same taste.
Yeah, do you, oh.
Yeah, same thing.
So you get tired of too much peppery? You get tired of too much yummy goodness?
Yes.
Anybody in here actually know why you stop? Yeah, you get full. You can't eat anymore. Maybe that's the disgust, because you look at it and you're like, if I eat any more of that, I'm going to explode. Then you look, and then you think about yourself. Yeah, and then, but here's the thing. You need to sacrifice what you are for what you could become. Go puke it up. Now you can have more pizza. And that's good diet advice. Questions? Comments? Concerns? What did we learn in school today? Scanlon said we shall be bulimic. Just for the video, don't be bulimic.
Disclaimer.
Disclaimer. Right? Yeah. Don't. But in that case there, what stops you is what you currently have. That's the thing that stops you from what you could be. If you actually really enjoy, like I said, the thing that stops us from eating pizza is not like so much like, oh, I'm tired of it. Yeah, you might get a little disgusted by it, but it's because of these physical feelings that you've eaten so much of it, and you couldn't possibly eat anymore. If we could take out those ribs, if we could open up your rib cage and your stomach could just go and extend more, we would eat more. We would eat more.
But you'd be dead.
What's that?
But you'd be dead, wouldn't you?
Oh, but what a wonderful way
What
to
if
die.
you just don't die? Dude, just like not die.
Just
Yeah.
become immortal.
I don't know. I don't know what would happen if you opened up the rib cage. I guess everything would start to like
What's
float
the
around.
sound?
Yeah, why not? How about the guy who didn't
The guy that just eat the crust.
Bro, it's the worst part.
How is it the worst part? Oh my god, it's
But he
literally
sticks
great.
by it, and I love it. So think about what it is that you could possibly become. And the hard part is that, the hard part with that is that you can't really conceptualize what you could become. It's so hard. You can imagine, you can desire, but don't confuse the desire for a thing with its probability. You can imagine, hopefully you can imagine what you could become. But the truth is that none of us can really imagine because none of us have actually done that. In other words, you have to be able to just go, all right, it makes sense intellectually that if I give up this thing today, I can be better tomorrow. tomorrow, next week, a month from now, a year from now. So you step out there on faith, just going like, you know what, I can't see it, but I'm going to walk towards it anyway and sacrifice all along the way. It's a really hard thing for us to do because it's an entirely human, conceptual exercise to do. So he's saying the important thing is to be able, by the way, not that you have to, but to be able to do that, to be willing to, so that when you find the thing that you're passionate about, or you find the thing that's going to, that is good reason, bless you, that you have good reason to believe is going to make you better, then you can step out and pursue that thing. But if you aren't even capable of, you're not able to do it, then when you do find the thing that you're passionate about, or you do find the thing that you love, it becomes impossible to do that, and that means you can never grow. Or worse yet, you can never be what you could become. And as we know, that's one of the hardest things for a parent. There's almost nothing that's going to be more influential in a child's life than the unlived life of the parents. Remember this. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms? Yeah.
I have a question. Even if you do reach a potential, don't people just get bored of achieving the goal they have? Like, for instance, like if you try your best to pass a certain test, once you do, don't you just feel bored after that?
Yes. Yes. Next question. Yeah, you do. And so there's a couple of points that are really important. How many of you guys? Well, if I see you guys in a couple of years, we watch. Well, maybe we'll do it this year. I don't know. We watch Disney movies. And when you watch Disney movies, they're so incredibly deep, the older ones especially, that there's so much going on. There's so many layers of what's going on. How many of you have seen Pinocchio? Okay. So how does Pinocchio begin? Does anybody remember?
A boy that becomes...
Before that.
The grandparents make the doll?
Before that.
The old man makes
Before
the Pinocchio because he wanted his son.
Before that.
Geppetto was poor.
No, before you even find that out. I'm asking, it's a tricky question. How do all Disney movies begin?
the speech that the cricket makes?
Before that.
The title?
It's right before that. Just title and what's happening while the titles are playing. Yeah, what's the song?
Oh! I forgot the song, but I know what you're talking about.
Someone find out. What's the song? It's important. No, it's not called I Forgot.
I just have really bad memory, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm a dementia patient.
Why do you keep saying that? It's the 5th time you've said that today.
When you wish upon a star?
Really? What's that?
When you wish upon a star.
When you wish upon a star. Yeah. And so where are stars?
In the
sky.
sky.
And how far are they away?
Very far.
Very far away. So if you're wishing upon a star, that means that you're wishing upon something that is very far away. If that's your goal, what are the chances that you're going to reach that goal?
Never.
Yeah.
Very low.
Very low. Yeah, very, very low. And what we know now is that even if you reach it, you're gonna die. You're gonna burn up. Well, let's just say that we're wishing on this star. Now, what would this star be? A goal. Yeah. Now think about a goal that would resemble a star, in the sense that it's so distant, it's so damn nearly impossible to reach, that very few people will ever reach it, even if you're at the top of your game and even if
Becoming a
you're
billionaire.
What's that?
Becoming a billionaire.
So you say, I'll become a billionaire. Okay. And what's interesting that there are what, 7,000 billionaires, something like that in this country? So there's a lot of them. And they're still pretty small in number compared to the overall population. So it's possible. So if you say like being a billionaire, if you're somebody who's particularly talented in a sport, you might think like, I want to play in the NFL. Okay, that's an achievable goal. Maybe you want to aim higher than that. I want to become a Hall of Famer. Because otherwise, when you reach the NFL, it's like you're saying, well, this is it. This is what my goal was. I made it. Now what? But if you're aiming for something even further beyond that, I want to be a Hall of Fame player. In other words, I want to, and you won't even know that happens until the end of your career. And then it'll take a few years after the end of your career to even know that you've achieved that, whether you've achieved that or not. So that would be an example of like a star, something that's so far beyond your reach that maybe becoming an NFL player is somewhere like over here. So that even as lofty as that is, it still isn't your end goal. You're still going to be driven beyond something like that. Like if we're thinking like, oh, I want to become a millionaire. Okay, fine, but that's pretty doable. So once you're past that, now what? And that's where you run into problems, with that too often we aim our goals so low that they are achievable. But like you said, what happens once you reach that goal? You know, Scarface. Yeah, I mentioned that in this class. Was it this class I mentioned that in?
No.
Guys, how many of you have seen Scarface? A few of you. Okay, so Scarface, it's a long story short, it's about a guy who emigrates from Cuba into the United States, and then he becomes a businessman, right? So he had the drug empire. And he kills his boss, and the boss is married to a woman, and spoiler alert, he falls in love with her, and he's like, I'm going to get her. And because he doesn't see her as a human being, he sees her as like a thing to be won. So towards the end of the movie, he's sitting in a restaurant, he's wearing a tuxedo. It's a very, very expensive, fancy restaurant. He's surrounded by other people in tuxedos playing music, and he's sitting there with his best friend, who was with him in Cuba, and he's there with his wife, who he ended up getting, and he's extremely wealthy, and he's smoking a cigar. He's just like sitting there with his arms up on the booth, and he looks almost like disgusted. He's looking around, and he just kind of goes, "Is this it? This is what it's all about, man? And this is what I was fighting for the whole time." You know, he reached all of his goals somewhere over here, but he didn't have anything in place beyond that except, I'm going to do what I've done, and I'm going to do more of it, and then do more of it, and then do more of it. There has to be something else that you're aiming for. There has to be a star that you wish upon. Something that's so far outside of your reach that it's physically possible or it's humanly possible. But it might be a little bit outside of your reach. So that even if you aim for it and you only get to there, you're still better off than you would have been if you had never set your goals that high in the first place. So in other words, you're going to achieve far more than you otherwise would have. And you might be like, oh, but you didn't reach that. Yeah, but you did reach all of these other things along the way. Won't you be dissatisfied? Maybe. Aren't you going to be dissatisfied if you set your goal here and you achieve it? Aren't you going to be dissatisfied no matter? The question is going to be, where do you want to be dissatisfied? Do you want to be dissatisfied with having done a whole heck of a lot, or do you want to be dissatisfied with having done very little? Life is suffering. Life is suffering. You don't get to choose not to suffer. You get to choose what you're going to suffer for. You need to find something that makes the suffering worthwhile to help you transcend the suffering. So which of these things do you want to use to transcend the suffering? That becomes the question. Yes? Okay. You had your hand up too.
Oh,
All right.
well, it was a funny comment, but then I forgot
Please.
it.
Oh, too bad. You could use one. Anybody got a funny comment?
See, I'm sorry.
That's not funny. That's just sad. All right, we'll take that. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Neato. Go ahead and put those away.
Happy Wednesday.